Good morning, everyone. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. Or good afternoon, I think, as of 5 minutes ago. My name is Farid Einar. I am the founder and CEO of Plume, and in fact, very honored to be here today with His Royal Highness, His Excellencies. It's a wonderful event, and I feel quite thankful to be here. I'm going to change the conversation a little bit. We talked about energy and energy independence, deep cyber security. I want to perhaps have a little bit of a more abstract conversation. This is the concept, and I'd like to introduce this concept of the space in between. And it relates to connectivity and human experiences in our everyday lives. So I admit that it's perhaps a little abstract, but I'll give you the final answer from the beginning. So if you don't want to listen to the conversation, to the presentation, the answer is all about you. So let me start here. I'd like to start by reviewing the needs of the modern consumer. The modern consumer is me, us, you, and the drivers and core technologies of those needs. And I'm going to talk about these in the context of, let's say, over the last 2 to 3 decades. Until about year 2000, the need of the consumer, our needs were basically around basic connectivity, driven by our desire to work and be productive from home. That sounds a bit ironic, particularly today. And the enabling technologies were things like fiber optics, optical networking, a field in which I spent many, many years. And the scale of interest was millions of locations. So think of them as largely our homes. Now, over the last 20 years or so, our needs have shifted towards performance. The bits and the bytes, gigabits, gigabytes, feeds and speeds, if you will. And that was driven by what it feels like an insatiable desire for entertainment and social. Those were the key drivers. And then with the advent and introduction of mobile broadband technologies and things like IP protocol, the scale of interest grew from millions of locations to billions of people. So we have gone significantly higher. Now, what myself and my company is really betting on moving forward is that the needs of us, need of the consumer moving forward, is all around personalization. It's around these cross-device experiences, and it's driven by complexity. Complexity that's introduced by the ever-increasing number of devices, these IoT gadgets that are hitting our homes. Some people call it the IoT tsunami. Now, what's most significant here are 2 things. Now we move from a scale of billions of people to trillions of things. And the enabling technologies have changed. It's no longer the bits and bytes. It's things like Wi-Fi in the unlicensed spectrum, cloud, massive data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, AI. And speaking of AI, this begs a simple question. Everybody's talking about AI these days. Now, in our minds, in this context, here's the question. Should machines control or even drive human behavior? Or should humans, we, drive how machines learn and adapt to our behaviors? Now, the answer may be obvious. Yes, I would submit that technology and machines need to adapt to us, not us to them, even in AI. And AI is just a key tool, very important, but a key tool that we can leverage moving forward. And to understand how that can happen, I'd like to go back and start in 1954 with this gentleman. This gentleman, Julian Rotter, was one of the 20th century's most eminent psychologists who had just developed this concept of locus of control. And 68 years later or so today, the ways that it applies to our lives and experiences continue to grow and grow. He argued that the locus of control reflected in how we connect with each other, to ourselves, to our environment, to information. So taking a clue from that information piece, in order to create a new form of connection, I submit that we must consider this locus of control. in the technological advances of the coming decades. So this is what he meant. There is this external locus of control, which is characterized by the feeling that things are happening to you. When we think about connectivity, this makes a lot of sense, because a decade ago, incredible things were possible, and we were excited about the future. The smart devices were just about to hit our homes. We were promised that the world would come to us and simplify things. That happened, but our devices and throughput, these two elements determined what was possible. We were just a part of this connected world. So taking it one step further, a decade later, what we thought was incredible back in 2012, let's say about 10 years ago, looks primitive right now. I think many of you would agree with me. Now we have control. For example, we can adjust dials and locks from afar, turn up the air conditioning, our house in Dallas, from a stage here in Riyadh, for example. This is the internal locus of control. But we are still responsible for making these devices do great things. We are the center of our own universe, which is great, but there's a big but. It comes with a lot of effort, and we can do more. Initially, Mr. Rotter explained this concept as a binary one. What he meant is, and then back in 1975, I believe, he issued a clarification stating that to truly understand the locus of control, we needed to understand that these things happen on a spectrum with a vast space in between. That a balance between internal and external forces were actually the goal and the overall ideal and intent, if you will. This is what you can think of as the unified locus of control, where amazing things happen for us. Not to us, but for us. Not by us, but for us. So I think of it as essentially the Zen of connectivity. Just think about this. Just think about what that could mean, the simplicity, the possibilities that it brings. But let's not, I'd say, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I don't want to get too excited, because in order to get there, we need to fundamentally change how we think about connectivity. And that begins with understanding the vastness of this opportunity. In here, perhaps a black circle. This is the space in between. And those who control this space will control the future. But when we talk about connectivity, then what exactly are we in between? What are on the other ends? Well, since the beginning, when we thought about a connected universe, let's say, we thought about two finite points in a line. On one side, we had these, let's say, interfaces. Think of them as iPhones, apps, I don't know, smart cars, appliances, thermostat, and so on. These are terminals, the endpoints. It's a fixed endpoint, and they take pretty serious R&D to manufacture and evolve. On the other side, we have utilities. You can think of them as the infrastructure, if you will. Fiber optic cables, switches, routers, the internet, all obsessed with achieving scale. They are, I would submit, commoditized, and one could argue that they evolve somewhat slower because they're infrastructural. Lots of hardware involved. But in the space between, we have a furiously growing opportunity, is what I would submit. We've come so far. These kind of numbers would have been unthinkable just a decade ago in terms of number of connected devices, average speeds of the internet around the globe, etc. And by 2030, the number of connected devices is apparently set to be about to reach 125 billion. I personally don't believe it. I think it's a way too conservative a figure. In the same year, people say, that the average internet connection will deliver 1.5 gigs, at least in the US. I would submit that's also likely quite conservative. Everything, I would submit to you, is revolving at warp speed, but at the end of the day, none of it really matters. Not if we continue to only obsess over and inflate the size of these endpoints and fail to optimize the space in between. That is where the opportunity is. Because the space in between is where a future for you happens. Where the things that you want to happen effortlessly. They happen automatically with minimum input, but maximum personal control. And your participation improves the experience of others, and theirs improves yours. It's how a future exists where your data works for you, instead of making those who capture it rich. You know what I'm talking about. That is the unified locus of control. And here's what I'm talking about. Has anyone ever thought about what your personal data is worth? I didn't. But apparently, your personal data is worth between $2,000 to $3,000 per year, making the lifetime value of about if you do the math, about $182,500. That's a pretty staggering number, I would admit. And you're probably wondering, well, if that's the case, if that's true, shouldn't I share in that profit? By the way, that was not the experience this guy, Federico Zanier from the New York University, an IT professional, found out. He decided to carefully track and sell a month of his personal data. Apparently, he was expecting to net around $500, but ended up getting paid exactly $2,733. So making the lifetime value, if you use those figures and do the math, of the data of $2,394,108. That's just the math. Of course, we're not thinking about inflation or the fact that Federico is a mid-level IT guy versus, let's say, a CEO or CMO of a tech company. So, I want to ask, again, a number of elemental questions. Why is the number you see on the screen what they think of you? And if that's what they think of you, how private and secure is data? Really, think about it. If they think of you as like that, as a number. Shouldn't we have a say? Wouldn't it be nice if your data was being used to improve your experience? These are the fundamental questions. And why does there have to be an us and them? When there's a massive profit and opportunity in making the in-between work for all of us, unifying the data to elevate personal experiences. You might be asking, okay, all right, so Fari, how does that happen? How the data created in this space between can elevate our personal experiences in the connected universe. We, in my company at Plume, we thought about it. And we came up with the 3 Ps. Let's talk about them. First is personalization. It's predictive, it's contextual, and it's convenient. Another is protection, which means privacy, security, and control of your data. And the third P is possibility, freedom and shared experiences. In the space between, things happen for you. In some cases, they happen simply because you desire and you ask. In other cases, your needs are anticipated because the universe understands the context and intent. It understands you, predicts what you want, and makes it happen on your terms with minimal effort because you own the space in between. And even better, the aggregated knowledge you contribute by participating actually moves everyone forward. That's the world that we are envisioning. But that's what we're envisioning. That's not the current reality. And it won't be until new rules of engagement are rewritten, or new rules of engagement are written. We believe we've done that. For connectivity in the next century to work for and benefit everyone, our experiences must be driven by these 3 Ps: personalization, protection, and possibility. And here's how. We use massive data. It's driven by new human goals. We use massive AI, yes, to smooth out these pain points and anticipate needs. It must be learning driven. It must be hardware agnostic. fast and flexible as a platform with an immense amount of software. And it must be consumer controlled through this unified locus of control. By the end of 2020, 44 zettabytes made up the entire digital universe. And that's 44 trillion gigabytes of aggregated data in the space in between, just waiting to be used to improve our overall human experiences. In our cloud, we manage interactions between these devices and utilities. About 206 billion of them last year. Each of them unique, dependent on these make and model of these devices, each make and model. And we consider the applications that they're running. That's 206 billion opportunities to learn and optimize, which can only be done by machines, with each successive interaction making us smarter and more capable of predicting what will come next. That is massive data, and that is how we're able to provide these delightful experiences. When we talk about massive AI, did you know that 77% of the devices we use already feature one form of AI or another? A typical home, for instance, we do this every day, requires more than 72 intelligent interactions between devices and utilities every day to ensure everything is properly connected, just to ensure proper connectivity. And that number will grow predictably the more we participate, but only if AI is used, as I mentioned, to smooth out these data points and anticipate our needs. On the device side of the equation, we see over 29,000 distinct makes and models of devices. And that number grows about 38% a year based on our experience. Detecting virus or malware infections requires learning the details of roughly 12 behavioral traits for every device type. So if you multiply, do the math, that's a total of 348,000 traits that need to be learned quickly. If this continues, in just 5 years, there will be over 1.7 million behavioral traits that need to be learned to protect our devices. So I would submit that we must be learning driven. That requires machines. The good news is this: with each threat blocked, we get smarter and more predictive. On our cloud, for instance, we saw a 433% rise in blocked threats in the US on smart TVs in a single year just last year. Perhaps it's related to COVID, where people were home a lot more. And as we add more devices, these interfaces, the protection will continue to get better and better and better. Let's talk about the enterprise side of things. When we talk about control, 55% of the data is what's called dark data, meaning it goes completely unused. And the other 45%, I already talked about it. We know what it's being used for. We already gave you the numbers. Now, the space in between is where we have the ability to get smarter and more predictive, merging the data and potential of these devices and utilities to create spectacular experiences. For example, a typical home is exposed to more than 160 web-based advertisements per day. That's what we see. With unified control that puts the consumer in the driver's seat, we can block or filter them by learning the previous requests of the user, their desires and behavior of the consumer, and anticipate need and do it perhaps automatically. But these possibilities, I would say, only exist when a new presence unifies the space in between and the utilities, these interfaces and utilities. And I think we've been thinking about what happens between them, between interfaces and utilities, all wrong. The industry has been competing, selling data to retarget and track people, instead of crafting these delightful human experiences and engineering connectivity so that amazing things happen for us. for you, not by you, and not to you. And here's where I'll end. Isn't this what we were promised? Think about it. I believe that it's what the next century will be defined by. Technologies are with us. And we, in my company, have been working to elevate these human experiences and write the new rules of engagement, as I mentioned, so that you can witness every node in the network made for you, by you, cooperating and opening doors, and being agnostic to devices. Because your universe knows more about you specifically and allows your experience to harmoniously evolve for everyone on the planet. Thank you very much.